Hi, it's Katrina.
Number 10. Giant of Odessos. The skeleton of a very large individual was discovered during an excavation in Bulgaria. It happened in March of 2015 in the city of Varna, with archaeologists from the local Museum of Archaeology taking the lead on the investigation. They uncovered the bones of a truly giant person underneath the fortress wall within the ruins of the old city of Odessos. According to the initial reports coming out of Europe, scientists were shocked at how big the bones were. They quickly concluded the individual lived around the 4th century AD, and that the skeleton belonged to a man. Professor Valery Yotov, the man in charge of the team, described the bones as impressive, although he refused to give the exact height of the skeleton. He simply said the man was very tall. But the mystery doesn't stop there. No one knows where the skeleton came from in the first place. The bones were discovered underneath the wall, meaning they must have been placed there before the wall was put up. Professor Yotov suggested the person may have died while working on the fortress, then was buried in its foundation. But it's weird because there haven't been any other skeletons found here. Some have suggested the prehistoric man may be much older than the ruins under which he was found. Some even say he could belong to an extinct race of giants, believed to have roamed Europe thousands of years ago. Number 9. Gigantopithecus Bigfoot. From roughly 2 million years ago until 100,000 years ago, there was a very real giant that roamed the planet. It was the biggest ape that ever lived, a shockingly huge beast known as Gigantopithecus blackeye. This monumental ape was identified and named by anthropologist Ralph von Koenigswald after its discovery in 1935. This prehistoric creature truly was a giant, with an outward appearance much like a gorilla. Only this thing weighed upwards of 660 pounds and stood around 12 feet tall. To put some perspective on that, the Gigantopithecus was about 40% heavier than the average modern gorilla. So, what does this have to do with giants? There is a theory which claims the Gigantopithecus is the ancestor of Bigfoot, and that Bigfoot is a missing link between humans and great apes. In other words, Bigfoot is maybe a hybrid between apes and people, making it a living giant. We already know the Gigantopithecus is related to modern orangutans. Scientists connected the two animals by testing a 1.2 million-year-old molar found in China. Trying to connect the ancient ape with Bigfoot will be a little more difficult, considering Bigfoot has never even been properly photographed, never mind tested for DNA. But if the theories are true, it would mean giant ape-like humans are still alive right now, hiding somewhere in the North American wilderness. What do you think about all this? Let me know in the comments below. Number 8. Giants in the Ozarks. There are a lot of myths and legends in America's Ozarks. Tales of gold, lost treasure, and biblical giants are among the most common. In the late 19th century, stories began circulating of abnormally large skeletons being found in burial mounds throughout the Ozarks. These skeletons supposedly belong to prehistoric people far taller than ordinary men and women today. Other more fringe theory promoters believe their denial isn't coming from a place of scientific knowledge, but from stubborn unacceptance of anything that goes against the grain. One of the greatest giant discoveries in the Ozarks history came in April of 1934. A landowner named J.D. Crane discovered a symmetrical mound on his property. Atop the mound was a cluster of white oak trees, and it looked as if they had been there for a very long time. In fact, the mound didn't appear out of the ordinary at all. It was just a lump of earth with some trees growing on it. But what J.D. found underneath would shock the nation. According to historical records, he discovered 7 skeletons, and at least one was over 8 feet tall. Along with the bones, he allegedly discovered petrified human hearts. This happened almost a century ago, and we still don't know the truth. The story was relayed in the Springfield Daily News. The article published on April 25, 1934. We know this happened, but we don't really know the true details since newspapers were kind of sensationalized back then. Scientists dismissed the discovery as nonsense, and no one even knows where the skeletons are anymore. Number 7. Giants of Gath. Archaeologists were excavating areas in the Philistine city of Gath when they came across ruins made from huge pieces of stone, dating back to the 11th century BC. They found a city built for giants, with disproportionate architecture and supersized fortifications. The reason this is so important is that the 11th century was when the story of David and Goliath in the Bible took place. That was about 3,000 years ago. Putting aside any religious doubts, most scholars do agree that David was a living historical figure. He lived when Gath was a thriving Philistine metropolis. There is also a good chance that he did in fact fight single combat with someone named Goliath. In the Bible, Goliath comes from the city of Gath, the city just found to be composed of gigantic buildings fit for real giants. A lot of things in the Bible really did happen. For example, Gath was destroyed around the year 830 BC, just like what's written in Kings 2. Bar Ilan University professor Aaron Mayer says the architecture in Gath was found to be larger than anything else in the Levant during the same era. The walls were wider, the fortifications were bigger, the material used to build the city was different. All evidence points to a city of giants, which corroborates the biblical narrative about Goliath. It looks like there really may have been a group of gigantic people here in biblical times. People who had to build bigger houses with stronger walls. And now for number 6. But first, I want to give a big shout out to Quell Buys and Amanda Fahey. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more videos about amazing history. Number 6. The Kina Metzin Giants. In Aztec mythology, the Kina Metzin was a race of giants who lived on the earth in the days before modern humans. Aztec legend states that there were 4 old cycles of creation and destruction before the one we are currently in. The world was full of creatures and people, and then the world was destroyed, and then a new cycle began fresh. This happened over and over, similar to what we see in the Bible. The previous era was when the Kina Metzin ruled the globe. However, they refused to honor the gods, and so their mighty civilization had to come to an end. The Aztec gods brought calamities down on the giants, wiping out most of their people and bringing an end to the era. This is oddly similar to the story of the Nephilim in the Bible, who turned against God and then were washed from the earth, beginning a new cycle for humanity. But what kind of proof is there that giants truly lived in Mexico and the surrounding area prior to the Aztec? The Aztec attributed many things to the old race of giants. They believed the monumental pyramid of Cholula was built by the giants. This shouldn't be a big surprise considering the Mexican pyramid is the largest in the entire world by volume, 25 meters tall and 300 by 315 meters wide at its base. The Aztec also believed the Kina Metzin were behind the creation of Teotihuacan. Number 5. Ecuadorian Giants. Impossibly gigantic skeletons were uncovered in the Amazon region of Ecuador. According to a research team led by anthropologist Russell Dement, the bones were recovered starting in 2013 and then sent to Germany for examination. The team supposedly found over a dozen human skeletons from the 1400s, only about 600 years old. Yet these skeletons all measured between 7 and 8 feet tall. When asked about the discovery, Russell told reporters he didn't want to make any large claims or speculation because the work is still ongoing. But he did admit the discovery has some interesting implications. These skeletons appear to be the remains of giants. These were not just the abnormally large bones of prehistoric men, but included female remains as well. In most cases of giant skeletons found in the ancient world, it was a man who somehow grew to be an extra foot tall. But these skeletons indicate an entire race of giants, all of whom were 2 and 3 feet taller than ordinary. Unfortunately, nobody knows what became of this unusual archaeological find. Russell did mention that he was concerned about looking harebrained, understanding the discovery of giants was unconventional and controversial. But it's been almost a decade, and we still don't have official scientific confirmation. So, as far as we know, the skeletons were dug out of burials in Ecuador, identified as giants, sent to a laboratory in Germany, and the case was closed and buried. Number 4. The Cahokia Giants. Astoundingly large human skeletons were found buried in mounds in early 19th century America. It was right around the turn of the century that hundreds of reports started flooding the nation's newspapers from reliable sources. each one claiming giant skeletons were starting to be uncovered in different places in America. Most of the giant skeletons were being found in burial mounds. These mounds are all over the U.S., but primarily in the southeast. Some of the biggest we know about include the Cahokia Mound, built long before the arrival of Christopher Columbus. The Cahokia Mound is about 100 feet tall, and its base is about 14 acres. It was from burial mounds like this, created centuries ago by a lost people, that the giants were uncovered. All the way from Massachusetts to Arkansas, mounds were dug up, and skeletons of humans up to 10 feet tall were uncovered. Men, women, and their children even. Some of these people had legs that were 5 feet long, the average size of many humans on Earth. It may sound like 19th century paranoia and hysteria, but there are real newspaper articles from reputable sources like the New York Times. However, the reports didn't last long. Almost as quickly as the giants started being found, stories of them stopped being published, and all the skeletons supposedly vanished. There isn't a single one left today to prove giants once lived in America. Number 3. The Giant of Egypt. Sa-Nakht was the giant who ruled over ancient Egypt 1,000 years before Ramses II took the throne. He has been a mysterious figure ever since archaeologists learned his name. We don't know exactly when he took charge of Egypt, only that it was around 5,000 years ago. We also don't have any written records on what type of king he was. We know only of his existence because of seal fragments discovered at Abydos in Egypt. In 1901, Sa-Nakht's remains were allegedly discovered in the small village of Beit Khalaf, but it's not entirely certain. Somebody's bones were found here during excavations, and there were some fragments bearing the name of Sa-Nakht. However, the tomb was never officially labeled his, and may have belonged to a high official or even a queen. Discovered in the tomb was the skeleton of a man of great height. He would have stood 6 feet 1.5 inches tall, way taller than any other living Egyptian. Famous physician Charles S. Myers said the average ancient Egyptian only stood at 5'6", meaning the skeleton belonged to a real giant. It may have been the pharaoh, potentially the tallest pharaoh to ever rule Egypt. He may even have been a descendant of a race of giants, going deeper into prehistory. Number 2. Giant hand axes. The mysterious tools of giants have been discovered in Spain. Giant hand axes that were used between 200,000 and 300,000 years ago were recently analyzed by a lab to see what their function was. Scientists determined the enormous tools were used to process things like wood and animal carcasses. They were used by our own mysterious ancestors to process food in prehistoric Europe. The hand axes are positively massive. The ones found in Spain are roughly double the size of most other similar tools used by modern Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. For a person to have used the tool, they would have needed both hands, and it would have been extremely awkward. It honestly makes a lot more sense that the tool was used by a mysterious race that was significantly bigger than we are today. And while that would be the thing that makes sense, scientists have denied the possibility. Researchers say that even though the hand axes were so big, almost comical, the human species which used them was likely of average size. Scientists called them archaic Homo sapiens, meaning they were close to modern humans, but not quite there yet. Number 1. The Longshan Giant. In 2006, researchers discovered a human skeleton of unimaginable proportions. It was found while Chinese archaeologists were excavating a prehistoric site in Shanxi province. The skeleton was dated back to the Longshan culture of between 4,400 and 4,000 years ago. Based on the features of the skeleton, archaeologists were able to determine he was a young man between 16 and 18 years old. The weird part was that his skeleton was measured at 6 feet 3 inches. This made him significantly taller than any other skeleton found in the region. According to an article published by the Cambridge University Press, the Longshan skeleton proved to be the tallest ever found in prehistoric China. The remains were nicknamed the Longshan Giant. We don't know where this giant came from, if there were more like him, or if he was a biological fluke. Researchers believe he belonged to an entirely different race of giants. one that shared several characteristics with people from modern southern Asia. But his race was likely older, maybe a fringe group of humans that grew to gigantic proportions. Even more outrageous is that archaeologists found 3 holes drilled in the right parietal bone of his skull, just like a bowling ball. But nobody has ever figured out why. Everything about the Longshan Giant is a mystery. Thanks for watching! Do you think giants really walked among us? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon. Bye!